Can ninjas adapt to a world with Orcish Bowmasters, or is the deck just dead since it plays a handful of 1/1 enablers? Let's find out. Hello folks, Phil Gallagher aka ThrabenU here for another Legacy video, and today we are going to be playing ninjas. Generally speaking, the various ninjas like Yuriko draw you a card or something very similar to it when they deal combat damage to a player, and they have the ninjutsu mechanic that allows you to cheat them in without paying their traditional cost. To do this, we are going to have cards like Ornithopter or Changeling Outcast on turn 1, and then follow those up with an attack. After no blocks, we will put our ninja in on turn 2, and then try to start Spiral the game out of control. Retrofitter Foundry often serves as the plan B for these deck lists, as both Changeling Outcast and Ornithopter are technically Thopters. So if the ninja plan isn't working, you just sacrifice those and just make 4/4 creatures that happen to survive Lightning Bolt and can do a lot of damage to your opponent. The ninja deck usually spirals the game out of control by using free cards like Force of Negation, Snuff Out, Force of Will, and Daze to really take advantage of the fact that you are getting to draw at least one extra card every single turn. But there's two problems in the current metagame, and they're both related to the same card. Can you guess the card? That's right, YouTube, it is Orcish Bowmasters. This card is problematic against this deck for two reasons. Number one, it can ping your Changeling Outcasts as well as your tokens that you create off a Retrofitter Foundry, making it much harder for you to go in and actually get your ninja game rolling. And number two, guess what doesn't die to Snuff Out? The premier removal spell of the ninja deck. So I have a rebuild, sort of a reimagining of the ninja deck here that is going to take into account Orcish Bowmasters, and we're going to see if this deck can successfully adapt to the Orcish Bowmasters meta, or if this deck is just dead. Now, as a heads up, if you are looking for a chance to meet me and get some of my sweet tokens, or you're otherwise in the Durham, North Carolina area, there's some sweet tournaments going on later this month. Check out thegathering2023.com for all of the details, but there's some massive tournaments here and more that aren't listed on this front graphic. I know that I personally am really looking forward to the CEDH tournament on Sunday, as well as just casually playing some Commander on Friday night. Again, thegathering2023.com. And as always, this video is sponsored by both Cool Stuff Inc. and Moxfield.com. If you end up needing some paper magic cards, remember promo code ThrabenU will save you 5% at checkout at Cool Stuff Inc. So, thank you to Necropack for donating to make this league happen, and shoutouts to Clarostorix from the Ninjas Discord for posting this list that they top-aided an invitational event with. I've made two changes to the sideboard that I'll talk about in a minute, but the idea here is that ninjas can adapt to the metagame if they go into white. Swords to Plowshares is the premier removal spell of the format, and it being able to hit Orcish Bowmasters and Plague Engineer is a really big deal. This also gives you access to Prismatic Ending, because generally speaking, the Ninjas deck doesn't have the best generic answers to stuff. But white gives you generic answers to stuff, and specific answers to Orcish Bowmasters that the deck otherwise did not have. And I think this is really smart deck building here. So we have the general core of the deck with the Ornithopters, Outcasts, Retrofitter Foundries, Yurikos, and Ingenious Infiltrators, and then your own copies of Orcish Bowmasters, because, you know, it's Legacy right now, and this is the most played creature in the format, no exaggeration. Specifically within the Ninja's shell, this card is really nice. You can attack with your Orcish Bowmasters. It's not blocked. Poof, you put it back to your hand, and then you can recast it a little bit later on. This is a good value card specifically within the shell of this deck, and it just creates two bodies. Your opponent has a blocker, attack in with Bowmasters and the Orc, bounce the Orc to your hand after your opponent blocks Bowmasters, get in there with Yuriko, do some triggers. In terms of other interactions you need to know, this says whenever a ninja, This says whenever a ninja. So if you have multiple ninjas or ninja-like objects, you are going to get multiple triggers off Yuriko and Ingenious Infiltrator, and sometimes that can spiral a game very quickly, especially if you hit a Force of Will with Yuriko. I like the sideboard here. I've adjusted 2 cards. The original list had 1 more Dress Down and a Kaya Ghost Assassin. I cut those for another Force of Negation and the 4th Orcish Bowmasters. I just felt like those would be better choices for the online metagame that I was expecting. Yeah, with that being said, I think let's go ahead and hop into a league here and see how this deck feels. Let's battle. We have a near ideal opening hand here. I say near ideal because if this Changeling Outcast was a blue card, I think we would be at ideal status. I basically can't use this Force of Will that's in my hand. If I do so, I just have stone cold nothing going on with this hand. Okay. Whew, Ponder's great. Now, notably, against Death's Shadow, Changeling Outcast and Yuriko are both black. So, no Snuff Out for you. Oh, that's an awkward draw. Because I don't want to fetch a non-basic land. But I guess I am now. I was going to deal with 1 Swords to Plowshares being stuck in my hand. I don't think I can do that with 2. All right. We'll get on in with our creature. We'll do the ninja thing, and we'll see how much damage my opponent takes from this Yuriko trigger. How about 5? 1. It is another Changeling Outcast, which is another reason why Tundra is awkward here, because I can't deploy multiple of these in the same turn cycle. But if I would have gotten Island, it still would have been awkward, you know? Yep. All right, there's the expected fetch to clear. No immediate, like, fatal push or anything. That's a little bit of a weird brainstorm timing. Like, this gives me the opportunity to cast an Orcish Bowmasters. All right. Let's see what we draw with Yuriko here. It's just an Ornithopter. Unfortunately, we haven't hit a second blue card yet, and that land also doesn't cast an additional Changeling Outcast. I think that's just a it is what it is situation. And we'll pass the turn. Changeling Outcast, maybe not guarantees, but greatly increases the chance that I will actually get in there with Yuriko. There's Orcish Bowmasters, which is not unexpected. I'm fine Swords to Plowsharing the actual Orcish Bowmasters. I don't think I am going to Swords to Plowshares the token. I think I just let my opponent chump block with it once. Alright, cool. My hand's so bad. So let's just force the chump block here and keep the Swords to Plowshares for later. Ooh. Okay, sure. Fatal Push is incredibly bad for me here. I've never drawn an additional blue card. So I will play out some additional things in hopes of drawing another ninja next turn. But I'm kind of just struggling a bit here, honestly. Aussies is a disaster, because this paves the way for my opponent to actually resolve a Murktide Regent or Death Shadow or whatever that I can't answer anymore. Yep. Alright. Orcish Bowmasters 1, Ninjas 0. Yep. We'll play another Changeling Outcast. We can still get lucky and top deck a Yuriko specifically, get 3 Yuriko triggers and kill our opponent. But life is pretty awful. I think I am immediately chump blocking with Ornithopters. I could take 1 hit first before starting to chump block. Swords of Plowshares is a amazing draw now. It's even better. Holy shit. Swords of Plowshares, Murktide Regent. Get a 3 for 1. Kill the Death Shadows because my opponent's life total goes high. Alright. I am not going to fetch to thin in case I draw a cantrip. Thank you, deck. Very cool. So if I attack my opponent, I just take more damage back. I think I am on D right now. The Changeling Outcast that does not attack feels real fucking bad. Yep. Oh. Am I dead to dress down? What are you doing here? Oh, you're just going to deal more damage to me. That's fine. And this is why I did not attack last turn. Also just terrified that my opponent has 3 cards and is not making a play. Alright. I can, in theory, deal 3 points of damage to my opponent. I have to attack with both and try to draw 2 cards, hit Swords to Plowshares, resolve Swords to Plowshares. So I am looking to hit Swords to Plowshares plus blue card. Let's see if it happens. Please. Alright, my opponent tapped a black mana and then didn't do anything. Okay, that's not bad. Okay. I should now go to my opponent's upkeep. If I brainstorm into Ponder, and my opponent doesn't have Orcish Bowmasters, I want to do brainstorm now. Otherwise, I want to wait, give my opponent a chance to flash in Orcish Bowmasters at end of turn, cast the brainstorm in response. Yeah, I think well, there is also playing this. Okay, what percentage of the time do I beat Orcish Bowmasters just as 3 power in play? Orcish Bowmasters pings me down to 3, throws the orcs, attacks me for 3. I beat Orcish Bowmasters 0% of the time, even if I find the Source of Plowshares from Murktide Regent. I guess I have Force of Will. Let's make my opponent use the mana on their turn. Alright. Before they draw another card, do this. Those are not what I am looking for. Put back Ornithopter, Looted Delta, fetch to 3, find a new Tundra, get 3 more looks at my remaining 3 copies of Swords to Plowshares, Force of Will, pitching Days, Force of Will, pitching to Fairy. I think that was a pretty bad. Well, I don't know what their last card is. All right, I've whiffed. I'm dead. Yeah. I don't want to say like I lost because I was unlucky, because like my opponent was playing Orcish Bowmasters and that card is very good against me, but I feel like we're on the lower end of variance there. All right, I want Orcish Bowmasters for Orcish Bowmasters. I want Plague Engineers for Orcish Bowmasters. I want Unlicensed Hearse for trying to keep a Murktide Regent out of play. The timing's a little tough on that. I still think I have to play Changeling Outcast. How many Force of Wills do I go down in this fair matchup? Like, the Force of Wills are so good when you have ninjas and you are spiraling the game out of control, but a lot of times it's 2 for 1ing yourself in a pretty negative way. If I go down all of these, I'm playing good, honest, fair Magic. Alright, I had to step away for a minute, but I'm back. So if you notice my clock go down a bunch, that's what's going on there. We've got turn 2 Yuriko. I'm probably not playing turn 2 Orcish Bowmasters. It's just much more important to try to spiral the game out of control. I need more mana quite badly, but hopefully that's what Yuriko does. Nice, I love seeing that. ETB tapped. Ornithopter can be snuffed out. Yeah. Let's fetch. Grab Underground Sea. Send in with Ornithopter. And get Yuriko on in there. I'm looking for land right now, honestly, even though that doesn't deal damage. Oops, all Ornithopters. I guess I will play them out. Do I play both? I could just play one, intending to brainstorm away the other. Yeah, let's just do one. It's horrifying to cast this brainstorm into potential Orcish Bowmasters. But here we are. All right, some nonsense is happening. It is Orcish Bowmasters, which is going to resolve. What? Okay, they're going for me instead of pinging Yuriko and double blocking. Is what I thought was going to happen. I guess when I have 2 open mana, that's a little risky. Alright, that's fair. They're just going to go for the chump block instead. And now I'm going to play my own Orcish Bowmasters, which hopefully doesn't get dazed or forced. If it does, hopefully I just get a land, and I just play a Plague Engineer, put it on Orc, and we move on with our lives. It did get dazed. Alright. So, I am in trouble if I don't draw a land, I think. I guess I could draw a different ninja to ninjutsu in via Ornithopter, and that wouldn't be the worst. Alright, let's ship in with Yuriko and see how my opponent reacts. Alright, Yuriko did get in. Alright, hitting my land drop, which is super important. Now, my opponent did think for a while on Yuriko, so they might have been thinking about chump blocking. Get Tundra for variety, so I can't be wastelanded off of any one specific color here. And attempt to drop Plague Engineer. Nice. Looks like Orc's back on the menu. So at this stage, I would say that I am feeling ahead. You know, that can... Ooh, my opponent opting not to shock themselves, so they are probably feeling behind. I don't have a nice white removal spell for something like a Murktide Regent as of right now. I mean, that's annoying, but it's fine. That means this card's dead. Yeah, because I assumed that they would be naming Ninja to decrease the power on Yuriko. Bow boy, you say? That's not bad. Got a little bit of a rough hand here. I think I would like to brainstorm while the coast is clear and try to smooth things out. Great, there's another ninja. Retrofitter Foundry is actively good as well. Let's bury Changeling Outcast. I'll put a Brainstorm on top of my deck. Crash in with both of these. If my opponent wants to trade Plague Engineers, they don't. At which point, I'll bounce Ornithopter to do some nonsense. How did I stack this? 1-drop, 1-drop. Put the Yuriko on bottom. I did this wrong. I didn't account for my Yuriko trigger. I could have done 2 more points of damage to my opponent. Alright. I'm flirting with hand size here. I'm going to go ahead and play out 2 Ornithopters and call it a turn. I still have not found a white removal spell for a potential Murktide Regent. I guess I could have played Unlicensed Hearse rather than ninjutsu'd in the Infiltrator on my turn. That's pretty vulnerable to daze. Alright, Death Shadow is fine. Second Death Shadow is a little spooky. A Swords to Plowshares. Alright, let's just start here. There's cuter lines available to me. But let's start here. Okay, cool. My opponent's done with me. So that felt horrifying from my side of the battlefield, despite the fact that I won. Bowmasters is just so good. Like, has multiple blockers for Yuriko, punishes Ponder Brainstorm, kills Changeling Outcasts, makes Ingenious Infiltrator very awkward. I guess I have, what, 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 answers to it. I am fine keeping this hand. I don't love double Scrubland, but I have a card that goes under Bowmasters. I have the ability to answer my opponent's opposing threats. This is unexciting, but I'm hoping okay. I don't think my Turbo Ninja plan usually ends up just running away with the game anyway, based on my very, very, very limited experience in the matchup. No deck. That is, in fact, not what I wanted. Alright. Ornithopter under Retrofitter Foundry. Okay. I don't think I play Ornithopter here. My opponent is also in very real danger of timing out. Like, I stepped away for 4 or 5 minutes and they're still down that much clock relative to me. Alright, there's a second land drop. My opponent will fire off some cantrips before I can have an Orcish Bowmasters available. Also, we haven't talked about this, but Teferi also gets worse in a Bowmasters meta because it minuses down to 1 and Orcish Bowmasters pings for 1. It also leaves 2 bodies that can easily attack in and finish it. Alright, and we're chilling. I have to decide if I want the Ponder that is currently on top of my deck. I believe that I do. I'm going to cast Retrofitter Foundry around Days. And then Ornithopter all of a sudden becomes a much more threatening card. Alright, good stuff. End of my opponent's turn. I will turn that into a 4/4, and then probably just start using my mana to make 1/1s. We'll see. My opponent started casting a spell and then didn't do it, so I'm just going to kind of mentally note that they probably have either a Brainstorm or a Fatal Push. Either a Brainstorm they decided not to cast, or a Fatal Push that they realized wouldn't do what they wanted it to do. Okay, there's the Brainstorm that I suspected my opponent had. A Thoughtseize targeting me is a little annoying because, like, my opponent can see how empty I really am. But I have 2 different cards that cover Murktide Regent, so yes, this is actively fine. It keeps my Teferi from coming down this turn. But I am very much, like, not hurting for mana. My opponent goes to 13. And we'll ponder and try to find something else fun to do. Is that what I was looking for when I pondered? No. No, it was not. Am I taking that? Absolutely. And I will not intend on shuffling. Cantrip clock? Fetch first. That's weird. Alright, down to 10. Yep. So my opponent went to tap a blue, untapped it, then cast Death Shadow. Was that just them picking the wrong land? Maybe. I think I played Teferi this turn in an attempt to actually resolve the Plague Engineers around Days. I think that's my plan. I always need black mana. So if you're going to do something, make your moves now. Force of Will, pitching Force of Will. So next up, do I want to attack? I think there's a good chance my opponent has Orcish Bowmasters and is going to block anyway. Yeah. Orcish Bowmasters target themselves? Orcish Bowmasters target themselves. Oh, I see. To turn it into a 5/5. Okay. No, I had the right read on the situation. I just didn't think of that line. That's on me. Yeah, so the correct play was not attacking. I will take somewhere in the ballpark of 7 damage. We'll see if my opponent uses the fetch. My Plague Engineer is absolutely devastating, though. I think as long as my opponent's follow-up card isn't Murktide Regent, I'm fine. Yeah, that's okay. That's wrong. That's definitely supposed to go on servo. Put the fetch land in play. I will Plague Engineer on Orc. And my opponent can attack me for 2 with their Plague Engineer. But their Death Shadow can't really attack anymore. And then whichever way this goes, like, I just end up doing Retrofitter Foundry nonsense. Yeah, I'm super happy to make that trade. Again, Murktide Regent is the thing that beats me right now. Okay. I cast a Plague Engineer. I will put that on Orc. Preemptively. I'll pass the turn, and then my Brainstorm should be safe. I might just honestly activate Retrofitter Foundry, though. Like, if my opponent casts Murktide Regent, I have to Brainstorm and look for an answer to it. Yeah. Alright, so let's go and try to find a white removal card. Those are quite bad. Back land and Changeling Outcast. Surgical Extraction on Swords to Plowshares is pretty brutal. Alright. My opponent has shuffled my deck for me, so I don't need to fetch with Marsh Flats. Am I trading? If I don't trade, I can ninjutsu in, draw a card, redeploy Plague Engineer with my mana, but I kind of want to use 2 mana for Retrofitter Foundry 100% of the time to make a servo. If I don't block this and my opponent attacks me 2 turns in a row and then draws Bowmasters, I'm dead to Bowmasters ping or I'm dead to fetching. If I take this out of play, I can immediately changelings into Retrofitter Foundry 4/4s. If my opponent doesn't draw Bowmasters, though, I attack with Plague Engineer, put my opponent to 3, take 10, attack my opponent for 3. They have to leave this back later. I'm going to trade. All right. Brainstorm is fine. Bowmasters, Changeling Outcast. I can sacrifice a servo to block here. I will put back 1, 2, Changeling Outcast. I think I just resolve Bowmasters. Or no, I don't have to, right? Force of Will doesn't counter it. Daze doesn't counter it. Force Negation doesn't counter it. Yeah, this is fine. All right, my opponent has not attacked. So then end of turn, I will flash in Bowmasters, ping my opponent, put them to 4. I'm not gonna sack this. Oh, I amassed onto that. That's cool. So this can't be blocked. All right, and I win the match, potentially due to timeout or potentially due to actually just having the resources necessary to win. My opponent can't countertrip anymore. I've got Murktide on temporary lockdown. I can draw more cards. GG's. Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, which is just the best place to host your online deck lists, and I don't think it's close. I think it's wonderfully organized, and you can have a great system of folders so that you can go through, separate your decks by whatever you want. I separate mine by format. I have just a few legacy decks, and Moxfield is able to keep track of all the decks that even someone like me makes. So please consider checking them out. All right, I am on the draw here. I feel like this hand is awkward. I am very good versus a combo deck. Tundra doesn't cast Changeling Outcast. If I'm willing to play this game slower, I can just keep this and under on turn 1 into Changeling Outcast on turn 2 into probably Ninja on turn 3. But I think I'd rather just go down a card. I don't think about it for a second. Maybe this is me wanting to mulligan too aggressively. Leyline of the Void. So we're probably playing against a mono black Helm deck. In which case I have to be wary of Opposition Agent. And I guess also fucking Orcish Bowmasters. I got that covered via Force of Will. Alright. Yep. You may cast your Orcish Bowmasters. I'll Force of Will it. Yeah, I think pitching Brainstorm. That's my second land to Brainstorm into Changeling Outcast next turn, but I'm not really happy with those cards as a whole. I think I just tried to do better than that. All right, cool. Let's see if I'm punished with a second Orcish Bowmasters. No, I am not. But 4 looks at cards did not find me anything. Yikes. All right. That's an Opposition Agent, which I will just counter. Gah. This is awful. I'm just hemorrhaging cards here, and I have no source of card advantage. I am going to Brainstorm again, just accepting that I am full on dead if I don't find a land. Okay, I found a land. Put back Outcast, Bowmasters, play Outcast, full on dead to another Helm in very bad shape to an initiative creature. Am I getting Karned? No, I'm getting Douthie Voidwalkered, and black was a problem. Sure. Yeah, poke you for 1. You're at 15. Yes. Yeah, that has shadow, so I am not blocking that. All right, I'm at 15. Need to set a stop in my own upkeep here. End of turn. I will play Bowboy, ping my opponent. In my upkeep, I will junk Sholdred, play a new Changeling Outcast, crash in for 3, put my opponent to 13. And this is a removal spell as soon as my opponent wants it to be. But until then, I'm going to crash in for maximum amounts of damage. Fully dead to a Helm. In bad shape to a lot of other Haymakers. And it's possible I was supposed to fetch around Opposition Agent. Just throwing that out there. I'm going to ignore Opposition Agent and attack in with Orcish Bowmasters. We are in race mode here. And I would like to win that race. I've potentially already dropped 1 point of damage for waiting to play out Orcish Bowmasters so that I could also hold up Swords to Plowshares. Okay. Cool. I'm gonna be honest, we won that one just fully on my opponent's deck shitting itself. I don't know that I'm sideboarding much here. Like, I can play Bowmasters and Plague Engineer to get better versus opposing Bowmasters, and Force of Negation is justifiable versus Helm combo. I don't know what my opponent's sideboard is going to look like in terms of whether or not they're keeping Helm combo in. They are fully keeping Helm combo in. Null Rod becomes pretty reasonable, but boarding Null Rod comes at a very real cost and makes Karn real weird if my opponent is playing Karn. Man, my opponent's going to have like Bowmasters and Plague Engineers, and I don't have more removal to bring in the sideboard. Hate that. These creating 4/4s is super relevant in some games so that I can have blockers versus early opposition agents. Perfectly reasonable hand of Magic the Gathering cards that I'm not excited about. Because so many times my opponent plays just an Oppressive Shouldered or something on turn 1, and then this hand looks terrible. I'm gonna try to find a different looking hand. Double Scrubland. No. Okay, this is a keep. Turn 1, Changeling, Outcast, off Scrubland. Turn 2, Ingenious, Infiltrator. I think I keep this ignoring Opposition Agent by putting back Flooded Strand. And maybe I try to play around Bowmasters by keeping Ornithopter instead of Changeling Outcast. I could get rid of my Bowmasters in high roll and try to trigger both on turn 2. That line is much worse versus opposing Bowmasters. All right, no on the surface play, but we do have to keep in mind that Dark Ritual is a thing that exists. Storm is 1. Storm is 2. Storm is 3. My opponent does something like Dark Ritual into Bowmasters. I want to have both blockers. All right, there's the Dark Ritual. And Opposition Agent that we played around. Nice. I assume we're going to see, yeah, Dalthy Voidwalker. So my opponent is going to have 6 damage a turn. And we'll see if I can do better than that. Flooded Strand came back. Yeah. Yeah. Bounce Ornithopter. I'll get to draw 2 cards here, which is a huge deal, as my current hand is quite bad. Is still bad, but we're on the right track, and at least I can make a 3rd land drop next turn. At some point I might have to think about just throwing away an Ornithopter to just literally gain 3 life. Where's my blue card? All right, my opponent has named Orc here. And this is about the point where I start thinking about whether an Ornithopter is worth 3 life. That same decision probably presents itself next turn. I'm going to go ahead and wait a turn here. Take the 6. Yuriko. All right. Would my opponent block? Probably. I think let's just attack with the Ornithopter. And ninjutsu in Yuriko, which will trigger both of these. Let's see what happens. Yuriko hits a land, unfortunately. Fuck. So bad. Alright. So I have 3 fetch lands, a Force of Will that doesn't pair with anything. And that's my life. Alright. I have at least halted my opponent's traditional attackers, which is nice. Yep. So I can attack with Ingenious Infiltrator and trade it with one of my opponent's 2 creatures. And then hope I don't die to Helm of Obedience next turn, while potentially drawing a blue card for Force of Will. Let's do that. I'm gonna make my opponent make the decision before I commit my mana to anything. Alright, that's the block that I would have made on their end. So we trade these. I'll drop to Fairy. Bounce Helm. Blue card, blue card, blue card. Fuck yeah! Still in it, baby. There's the Helm. Here's the Force of Will. My opponent can decide whether or not they want to remove this Teferi. I don't think this Teferi does anything. Yeah, my opponent goes for my life total, which makes sense to me. What's in my exile zone? Force of Will is in my exile zone. If I want to resolve Orcish Bowmasters, it has to happen on my own turn. Go ahead and attack with Yuriko. Alright, my opponent takes the block. That's fine. Then I will Bowmasters and ping Opposition Agent to finish it off. Fetching is technically online now. However, 3 damage, 4 life, 1 damage, you know. Yeah. That's rough. Alright, still going at me. Ignoring Teferi. Go to 1. Ponder can happen. No bow boy in play. See what I can find. Yes. Force of Will on Douthy Voidwalker is actively good. Retrofitter Foundry is okay follow-up. We're going to Swords while this cannot Force of Will me back. Just in case my opponent were to pivot and like draw Orcish Bowmasters, because Orcish Bowmasters with Force of Will backup would kill me. I'm dead to Bowmasters and Shouldered at any time. Ooh, that's good. That's real good. Oh shit, there's a follow-up play too. Yes. And minuses finds Walking Ballista, and I'm deterministically dead if they have that. They might not. Okay, it's a Helm. I am not deterministically dead to that. Actually, with Retrofitter Foundry on top of my deck, I am just dead because that doesn't work anymore, right? And that was my out to this. Like, I block again, then there's a land below this. Yeah. That's unfortunate. I was wiggling hard there. Alright, do I want more Plague Engineers when I am on the play and they're a little more reasonable to cast as things that just block Bowmasters and friends? It makes it easier for me to save my own copies of Swords to Plowshares. Maybe Teferi's not the best, you know, Bowmasters matchup. And then I can think about these 2 cards as well. Force of Negation misses a lot of really important stuff. Yeah, let's get a little better at focusing on the fair stuff. And like getting creatures out of the way. 1 Retrofitter Foundry. Hedge against Karn a little bit. How do I feel about this 1 lander? I can turn 1 make a 4/4, turn 2 ponder and Swords to Plowshares most of the time. I think I'm going to keep this. I think as long as I get my second land, this hand is very powerful. I'm going to fetch. I'm going to grab a Tundra. I always need the white mana in play if my opponent like Opposition Agents or something. Alright, so cast Retrofitter Foundry, cast Ornithopter, and Be prepared to be the beatdown that I want to see in the world. Thoughtseize from my opponent is scary because that can take my ponder and make this hand significantly less good. And that is exactly what happens. Alright, yeah. Never didn't have it. We will fetch around scary cards here. Gaining full access to my mana. And now things are a little more interesting from here. If I want to play around Sheoldred's Edict, I should sorcery speed make a critter. But that is worse against Plague Engineer. So I think I'm just going to pass the turn with Bowmasters, Swords, and Retrofitter Foundry activations open. Alright. Get punished by Sheoldred's Edict. I mean, actively knew it was a possibility, right? So that's okay. Dalthy Voidwalker is fine. Probably end up Swords to Plowsharing that. Let's turn this into a flyer. And for the sake of using my mana efficiently, I'm just going to go ahead and do this. Because honestly, mana's tight right now. My opponent for 1. That occurs. Don't have a blue card to pair with Force of Will. Sheoldred is annoying. My plan for answering Sheoldred is block with a 4/4 ping with Orcish Bowmasters. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Yep. I maybe should have made the 4/4 already if that was the plan. Yeah, I maybe should have made the 4/4. I'm going to chill and leave my options open. Alright, my opponent gets some life. Now my opponent's on scary amounts of mana. I don't know that Sheoldred can attack. Well, I sure don't have a blue card to pair with Force of Will, so you've got it. Alright, no attack. I think I am going to convert this Thopter into a 4/4. So, still haven't drawn a blue card. I'm going to bash in for some points of damage. My opponent takes it. And I probably have to just pass the turn here, unfortunately. I'm full on dead to a 5th mana plus like a creature for Helm. Or sorry, like I'm full on dead to my opponent having the mana for Leyline and Helm activate, which would require 5 mana. Okay, so if my opponent has another land drop, I am dead. Oh shit, they don't. End of turn. Believe that I am sacrificing a Thopter to gain 4. My opponent blocks a 4/4. I take 4, 5, take a 6. Not quite gonna do it. I could untap this. That doesn't do me any good. I guess I am just maximizing damage output here. My opponent knows about Bowmasters, so they always block this turn. So I can always kill Sheoldred. That doesn't interact with the things that matter. So I just let my opponent eat a 4/4 and luck into lethal with Yuriko or something. I'm not 100% sure here. There's Brainstorm, which I'm doing pre-combat. Yeah. Swords to Plowshares. Does not interact with any of those things. I also can't Swords and then Ponder, and I have to Ponder. Yep. Okay. Yeah. I know. I'm abundantly aware. I Ponder. Shuffle. Yeah. So, we shove with everything and see if my opponent makes a weird block for some reason. So close to just being able to remove the Sheoldred and kill. It's 13, 4, 8, 9, 10, 11. My opponent blocks. I fetch. Grab a Tundra. I'll bounce a Bowmasters. Mana goes to 1. I died a Helm. I also died a Retrofitter Foundry. I don't have mana to recast Orcish Bowmasters. Did I have the Infiltrator already? No, I didn't have the Infiltrator already. Damn. GG's. Alright. I'm going to mulligan this hand. Like, it's somewhat reasonable looking, and it's like kind of cool if I brainstorm into an Ornithopter, but my opponent tends to play combo decks, so I'd like something that either has a guaranteed turn 2 ninja or some amount of interaction. I'll count this as interaction versus combo. I'm going to keep this and pitch Brainstorm, because I'm going to get black mana on turn 1, so I don't have a fetch for turn 2. Ancient Tomb. Ruby Storm. Understood. Bowmasters is reasonable, but not great here. I am going to hold up Bowmasters rather than play Ponder and Retrofitter Foundry. Put my opponent to 17. Yeah, these aren't traditional card draw. Those also don't draw cards. This is till end of your next turn? Okay. We'll go ahead and play Bowmasters, ping my opponent. Make this thing bigger. Makes it awkward for like sacking it to Retrofitter Foundry. But like, I guess that's what Ornithopter's for. Let's figure out what we're doing with our lives. I can hold up Swords to Plowshares for Bergie, or I can just get Yuriko going, which I think is better. No shuffle. We'll fetch, grab some black, go to combat, crash in with my creatures, bounce Ornithopter. I have 2 ninjas, so this does trigger twice. Swords and Ponder. Not the best cards. We'll see if we're dead. My opponent is at 10, and I believe bonus round is not a May. Bonus round is not a May, so that could get very awkward with some things like Manamorphose and Faithless Looting. Alright, that gives them some mana. Or no, that doesn't give them mana, right? That's mana neutral. It just makes more red, which is relevant. Alright, bonus round. That's 2 copies of Ren's Resolve. My opponent's definitely mana light here. We'll see if they can fix that problem. Another Lotus Petal lets them kind of keep going. Shatter Skulls, interesting. Yep. The Seething Song is what's scary. At this point, I'm F6'd. My opponent has 10 mana. We'll see what they do. Yeah. At this point, I am probably dead with Burning Wish already revealed. I think I'm just gonna go ahead and fast forward to my death. Okay, and my opponent has gotten Fiery Confluence. They can now send 18 damage to my face directly, and Orcish Bowmasters did not do Orcish Bowmasters thing and accidentally kill my opponent with bonus round. GG. Hydroblast. Flusterstorm. Null Rod, Force of Negation are all fine. Bowmasters is like, Not super interested in Teferi. It's quite slow. It's another way to get a Ruby Medallion out of play, which is cool. But most of the time I'm hoping to just kill my opponent or just bury them in free or cheap counter spells. If I'm keeping Swords to Plowshares for Bergie, Bowmasters is the easiest thing that I can board out while keeping my deck's normal velocity. Like, Bowmasters and Retrofitter Foundries are probably the most expendable thing, but like Retrofitter Foundry plus one of these two, just making 4/4 so I can bash my opponent is reasonable. I think I'm just going to ignore that side of the plan. This is 60 keeping 3 Bowmasters, if I want to do that. I think I'm fine with that. Bowmasters is definitely a secondary thing here. It's very easy for my opponent to win through it. Awkward, but keepable. I just have to commit to not using Force of Will on turn 1 with this hand, if at all possible. Like, I would have to let a Burgie or a Medallion resolve, because the Infiltrator is what spirals his hand out of control. I just draw 2 on my turn 2 by bouncing Ornithopter. Tapped land is great. Swords is great. I'm going to preemptively fetch a Tundra here. And I want literally any blue card. Bounce Ornithopter. You get 2 draws at any blue card. Okay. We hit, and we did hit a powerful one. Like, I'll be very happy to use that next turn if I don't have to Force of Will. But at this stage, I will Force of Will a Burgie or a Medallion. Yeah. Just because I have 2 card draws queued up already. Oh. Send in with the Ornithopter, you know. It sends a message. Yep. Yep. So we are going to ponder. Yes. We'll go 1, 2, 3. No shuffle. We have Swords and Flusterstorm available, with a Yuriko attack into revealing 4 damage. Yes. 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 No? This might be the point where I say no. Nice. I think I just at some point cut off the draw 2s. Oh, super punished. Okay, but it's Burgie-based stuff, so that's fine. So we will swing on in. Send in Yuriko, bouncing Ornithopter, and we're going to have some triggers. The actual card draws are going to go on bottom here, as I know that I have a 4 damage card on top with Yuriko. Yep. I maybe could have done... Yeah, so what I should have done was stack this Ingenious, Ingenious, Yuriko, Yuriko, Ingenious, Yuriko, so that I could have brainstormed this 4-drop back on top. All right. So, replay this. I want to play a fetch land so that I can remove 2 different Burgies. And we'll call that good. We'll discard a land and not a blue card. A prismatic ending. All right, Seething Song. Sure. This is the second Seething Song. I could Force of Negation this, but my opponent has 2 unknown cards. I think I just go for gas. Yep. I could Bowmasters. That doesn't matter. Yep. Okay, sure. Arnfell, I will respond to with Force of Negation. Pitching Ingenious Infiltrator. My opponent can now cast the backside, going down to 2 mana. That's probably good enough that I brainstorm and try to find a fluster there. Yeah, Force of Will work. All right, put back Swords, Bowmaster, Force of Will that, pitching Ingenious Infiltrator, and there we go. Game where I'm on the draw is a little harder. I think this is fine. This is a medium quality hand. I'm missing both land drops and counterspells, and I can't use a ponder to look for both of them. I think I am going to go to 6 and try to find a slightly more consistent hand. This has a fluster that I can hold up. And a Swords for Burgie. I am unexcited by this. I'm going to keep it. I think it's improved by enough draws that this is fine. Basic Island, I think, goes back here. All right. Yeah, kind of awkward thing is like Fluster doesn't hit Ruby Medallion. I'm going to hold up Fluster this turn, though. Yes, that's great. We'll end of turn Swords that. Let's ponder. I am happy with those draws, I think, or at least one of them. I'll draw the Null Rod, and I will leave. It's more likely that I want swords than Bowmasters. I will leave swords on top. I will leave swords on top. We will just immediately swords Burgie. I think after removing 2 Burgies in a row, I can not hold up Fluster this turn to put a Changeling Outcast in play. This is a gut feeling. I can be punished by this, but I want to be able to play Null Rod and hold up Flusterstorm in the same turn if possible. And I would like to get something resembling a clock into play. Yeah, this is perfectly fine with me. Yes. I'm going to hold up Fluster this turn. The Lotus Petals are off. Arnfell's off. Yep. Uh-huh. Opponent can string together quite a few cards here. Flusterstorm is probably my emergency break versus Galvanic Relay specifically. Yep. I can stop this if I want. I think I want. The second blue or black, or sorry, does the second black or white matter? Second black matters for a couple of fringe cases. All right, so we will fluster that. And this is awkward if they can keep going from hand or if they have relay. But maybe I shouldn't give my opponent a bunch of draw twos if I can stop it. Seething Song to pay. So that is probably the end. Burning Wish next turn is a little scary. Storm Count is not going to be anywhere near lethal. Yep. Let's see what this gets. It can get a wheel effect, and we can draw 7. There's also Past in Flames, yeah. All right, I believe that is going to kill me. I'm going to jump ahead. So my opponent is currently more or less all in on this Reckless Impulse. They have 1 bonus round. It's possible they could fizzle from here. That's a Burning Wish, so probably not. All right, I'll cut to me being dead again. All right, and we die after Burning Wish tutors up Fiery Confluence and copies it. GG's. It's possible I could have held the Flusterstorm for longer. I don't know whether or not it was correct. All right, I don't like my round 4 opening hand. I would rather start on something faster. Yes, I like this quite a bit. I don't think I like Retrofitter Foundry early here. So let's go Underground Sea and drop Changeling Outcast. Pass the turn. Potentially playing against Reanimator? No, Snuff Out. Probably not Reanimator. Probably a, like, Grixis control deck list. I'm going to eat shit to my own Orcish Bowmasters some portion of the time if my opponent has Reanimate. They just Reanimate, ping my Changeling Outcast. And I am real sad. Alright, fetch. Dark Ritual. Cool. Kept the land, which was the most important card in the hand. Fuck me. I quit. I am going to fetch right now, just in case my opponent has opposition agent in their Dark Ritual pile over there. Fuck. God damn it. I was going to get to bounce my Orcish Bowmasters and take it back, ping the Orc army, and instead I'm forced into pain and misery. Is this the way that I do this? Do I just wait a turn? I maybe wait a turn and try to take the Bowmasters instead. I hate everything. I hate everything so much. Yeah. All right. I've stopped your aggressive assault with my Ornithopter. Another Bowmasters. All right, no, sorry. The attack is just free, right? Because I have no points of power. Thank you, deck. The same thing repeats. All right. I now technically can interact. This is where my opponent will just play him to Turok. This saves 1 point of life every turn for turns after this one, but I think I just let this go. I think it's too important to stop something like a Shouldered from coming down. All right. My cantrips become less scary. All right. Yeah. I lose Yuriko for sure. Go down to 9. Try to hit the next land drop. No. Let's shuffle this. Thank you, deck. Very nice. Uh-huh. Yep, no, that's fine. All right. Cool. Cool. All right. Taking 4. I can draw exactly Source of Plowshares this turn. Otherwise, I think that's the end. That's the end. That was brutal. Assuming my opponent is playing their own Orcish Bowmasters, I need my Orcish Bowmasters and Plague Engineers here. I don't know how I feel about Force of Will here. Having the brakes on a couple of my opponent's cards definitely matters. I don't know that I want Force of Negation. I think I'm going to do that. Junk this. I should maybe play Unlicensed Hearse. My opponent is for sure playing Reanimate. So this is a pile of cards that I am thinking about. Do I want to play towards the you reanimate my thing, I bounce it line? I don't know that I do. It's a little narrow. I cut a Ponder. This hand doesn't do anything proactive. Like, I have land drops, and I can answer opposing creatures specifically. I don't think I can keep this. This hand is reasonable. Unexciting. Very unexciting, but reasonable. I will keep this and pitch my Plague Engineer so my opponent can't have something in my own hand to reanimate if they grief me. And I will just turn 1, fetch a Tundra around Opposition Agent, and drop a Retrofitter Foundry. So that even if my hand gets obliterated, unless I lose both lands, I just have something to do with my mana. Yep. Cycle. When my opponent reanimates that, my first hand that had Swords to Plowshares looks a lot better. This can't be blocked by 3 more. Get wrecked. Am I fine getting another Tundra? Yeah. Hardcast Yuriko next turn? I'm just going to take the second Swords, actually. Do this. Fetch. Tundra. Junk this. So, assuming that this card is still in my hand as of the beginning of the next turn cycle, I will just be immune to Reanimator nonsense moving forward, which is super cool. All right, nice. Can waste me off of black, which is pretty good. Very good, apparently. We will take out my opponent's junk from graveyard. I'm so happy I did not get wastelanded. It's very unlikely that my opponent will make me discard a card at instant speed, but there's a non-zero chance that it happens. So, I'm going to do this and take out this card. Goodbye, Turok. And I'm not going to attack with this. I'm just going to hold this up indefinitely. Ooh, so rewarded for playing that out. Yes, that's fine. I wonder if my opponent should have waited to play around this exact thing from happening. Goodbye, Turok. Yes. Going in with both. After no blocks. Go black. Blue. Bounce Bowmasters. I could get another point of damage in by playing Bowmasters now. I don't think I want to do that. Okay, cool. And I'll just pass the turn here. I probably won't play out my Bowmasters. Like, I'll just make a Retrofitter Foundry token in this turn cycle. Yeah, I'll flip my black and make my token. I'll hold the Bowmasters in my hand. It's a little awkward if my opponent like Thoughtseizes me and takes it, but yep, that's fine. Again, I have unlicensed Hearse that I can just use to take that out of the graveyard. Yep. And I think I am just comfortable crashing in as is. Send them. All right, my opponent takes it. Get another card. It's a Brainstorm. I won't cast that now. Like, I can just funnel mana into Retrofitter Foundry for the rest of this game while holding up Hearse. And if my opponent ever taps out in sort of a dubious spot, I just activate Hearse and go wild. Yes. I will respond to that. Because I can blank this a good portion of the time. Yes. Let's put back Delta, Ornithopter. Respond by casting Bowmasters and ping you. Very nice. Grief hits nothing. Take out some of your cards here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Not lethal numbers yet. Swing. Swing. Yeah, that's totally fine with me. Like, this game is not about ninjas. This game is about tokens and unlicensed Hearse and Retrofitter Foundry. And I don't think my opponent would have something like Null Rod. End of turn. Nuke the creatures from your graveyard. Make a token. Make a 4/4. Yeah, I don't think I expose that to a removal. I'm just in literal zero hurry to win. Like, that felt pretty good. I'll run things back the same way. It's notably scarier when I'm on the draw, though. I do not like this hand. Retrofitter Foundry, as I showed last game, is very good here. I'm going to get rid of Plague Engineer for being slow. Turn 1 Opposition Agent is awkward. It takes me off of the blue. And I need this Brainstorm to dig for Swords to Plowshares if something like Troll into Reanimate just happens. Alright, no Dark Ritual this time, at least on the surface. I can get got by Dark Ritual into Opposition Agent, so I'm not going to play that out here. I'm going to play a non-wastelandable land and fire off Retrofitter Foundry. Like, doing this definitely makes my Brainstorm next turn worse. Douthie Voidwalker is fine. I'm going to get a chance to fetch around Opposition Agent. I will grab a Tundra and I think just pass. See where this goes. Plague Engineer resolves. We'll see if my opponent names like Servo or Thopter or Orc or what. They're naming Orc. I'll take some points of damage. And I think I would like a better Brainstorm, so I'm just going to wait till my turn when I can fetch and clear. Fantastic. Let's Brainstorm while it does not cost me any life. Oh, this is quite good. I'm going to get rid of 1 fetch land, 1 Orcish Bowmasters. I will fetch, grab a new Tundra, Swords to Plowshares, Plague Engineer, cast Changeling Outcast, and Ornithopter, attack for 1, and I can make a pair of 4/4s with Retrofitter Foundry. Castle Lochtwain. Kick Turok is very good. This was my answer to that. Yep. There's also an Orcish... no, it's fine. There's an Orcish Bowmasters in XL. I'm just going to have to keep that in mind. I think the Dauthi Voidwalker is on attacking duty, so I think it's okay. That's just something to keep in mind. Right, I'm at 12. Goodbye, Thopter. Force of Will is late. I'm going to try to go ahead and pressure back. See how my opponent feels about tradesies. They do not like tradesies. All right, cool. Ooh. Turok plus Karakas is very annoying. Yikes. I have to respond to that by sacrificing this. Otherwise, that creature always dies, which makes the rest of my turn much more awkward. Thopter is an interesting name. All right. I'm dead in 3 turns to Dauthi Voidwalker. I can attack and always do Yuriko nonsense. I think I'm on attacks here. Like, this is an attempt at a turn 2 clock. I think my opponent just... Ooh. I would be happy with this. Or are you bouncing Turok? You're bouncing Turok. Yeah, I can counter Turok on the way back down. Plan on Force of Willing that, going to 8. That doesn't change my clock off of this. This is fine. The discard spell before Turok is a problem? Yeah, that's a problem. That occurs. Force of Will is now under Dauthi Voidwalker. Plague Engineer is the card I'm most scared of. Alright. One has floated mana. Do they think they need to pay for my stuff? Alright. Are you getting my Bowmasters? Try to ping my servo? You're getting my Bowmasters. Okay, pinging me directly. There are Reanimate coming? Order? Order? Like, okay. I don't think that was an optimally played turn of Magic the Gathering. I'm going to attack on in. No blocks. Let's send this in. Draw my card. That's not what I was hoping for. I was hoping to make a land drop. Yeah, that's fine. So this is now out of Bowmaster's range. But I don't think my opponent can let me connect with this ninja. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and send on in. My opponent might just block and bounce. We'll see. All right, there's the block. All right, no bounce. And I'll pass the turn. Swamp Cycle is fine. I am very surprised that you would Swamp Cycle. That is just castable at 6 mana. And it's horrifying on this board. Unless you have 2. All right, there's a kicked Turok, which I get to almost counter. So I can do this and force them to bounce it. Or I can just leave it in play. I want my Orc. Because I don't get the Orc if my opponent bounces Turok. Turok is not a threat on the ground. Would I be fine trading Bowmasters for Turok? Yes, absolutely. Because it's really annoying with Karakas. Send them. Okay, my opponent does not make the trade. They're at 6. I'll pass the turn. And I can start making tokens with Retrofitter Foundry. Grief is fine. All right, Turok does not attack. Every turn that I get to just start accruing tokens will become increasingly better for me. I don't have a good attack this turn. That's fine. This is just a 4/4. I don't know this one. Oh, it's the alternative ratchet bomb thing. Sure. That's a way to get rid of Retrofitter Foundry. Yep. I also might be able to force my opponent to use it on 0 to get rid of tokens. Yeah, they are going to use it on 0 to get rid of tokens. Yep. Okay. I will sacrifice a Thopter. I am fine double blocking here. I'm going to assume that that was my opponent messing up. And like I'm good with trading grief for Orcish Bowmasters. My construct is the valuable thing on the board here. I might not have made that block versus a more skilled opponent, but I think my opponent has made some pretty big missteps in this match that I've been able to capitalize on. Sure. Yeah, that's fine. That now forces Turok into a chump block, which is great for me because that card's really annoying. All right. I can play around Sheoldred's Edict by making a thing right now, but that's worse against a few other things. Sheoldred's good. The 4/5 specifically with Caracas Bounce. More legends. Rough. All right. Yeah, I know. So, I am probably supposed to cast this Ponder, despite the fact that it does hurt me. My opponent goes to 6. 2 constructs plus 2 servos. So if I take a Changeling Outcast and leave Yuriko on top, I probably kill them through Sheoldred, which will be my plan. All right. Yeah. I don't have much life to spare, and I probably lose to my opponent ripping something reasonable on this turn. Okay. Are you activating your castle locked, Wayne? Wow. Oh, no. Okay, I take that back. That's fine. That is life positive. Sorry, I forgot about the Sheoldred. All right. So I would like the Changeling to be unblockable, right? Or do I want a 4/4? Bowmasters is really, really rough if I don't sacrifice the Changeling. I think I need to go wide here. All right. I lose 2, and I shove. That's brutal. Yep. Now I'm dead to the Sheoldred trigger. No matter what, I know the card that I am about to draw. Have any outs? It's 5 damage. Does not do it. I have no outs to that. That's not true. It's a really stupid out, but I have an out still. Okay. So, return this to my hand to Commander Ninjutsu. Turn Servo into Thopter? Turn Servo into Thopter. Hit my opponent. Draw Ingenious Infiltrator. Put my opponent to 2. Play Changeling Outcast. Pass the turn. Do you know what my out is? My out's no longer an out. Oh shit, my opponent missed lethal. Fuck yeah, I still have an out. Yeah, my opponent pops that for 0, destroys Thopter, this can't attack in, and I'm dead. Fuck yeah, get wrecked, Sheoldred. Okay, so opponent says GG. Not yet. So I will Swords to Plowshares my Thopter. Hold on, do I make a new creature? Yeah. Make a new creature. Swords to Plowshares the Servo that I just made. Go to 3 life. Go to 1 life. And I need my opponent to miss something here. Okay, so this is currently not unblocked. Okay. So, I need my opponent to miss the fact that Yuriko is a legendary creature. I am always dead. So, I will put this in. Bounce Changeling Outcast to my hand. And I need the Yuriko trigger to kill my opponent, because if the Yuriko trigger doesn't kill my opponent, my Ingenious Infiltrator trigger kills me. God damn it! I worked so hard for that. Yeah. That was an amazing game. And I played to my outs really, really well there. GG's. All right. Final round here. I don't think this is a keepable opening hand. Yikes. This is also pretty bad. Would I rather mulligan and try to do a thing on 5, or would I like to try to do something very slowly on 6? I think I'll do very slowly on 6. I'm gonna play Tundra and pass because I need this to get Underground Sea, and I want the flexibility of being able to just Swords to Plowshares a creature that's played out on turn 1. But this plays worse versus Wasteland. Oh, are we just dredging? This is either Dredge or Reanimator. I am going to fire off this first Brainstorm here. Like, I very specifically know what I'm looking for. Yeah, Prismatic Ending gets buried. I'll just redraw whatever. What? What? My opponent began the game with 7 cards in hand, and then did not play that land, discarded that land. I am incapable of making any sense of that play. I'm going to cast a new Brainstorm with the intention of fetching. Ornithopter is fine. Going to throw Swords back, I think. And keep the cantrips. We'll go ahead and fetch this. It'll become an Underground Sea that I'll use to ponder, probably looking for Force of Will specifically. Yeah, no to all that. I don't know what my opponent is doing, but if this was not an error, their hand is very unfair. I assume that was an error. Let's figure out what's going on. Okay. Did my opponent just misclick the card that they were discarding? Did they mean to discard a troll and just reanimate it? So confused. I'm never brainstorming and... well, I guess I could brainstorm and fetch this turn. I guess I have to do it pre-combat. Okay. I just have too many lands here, so 2 lands are going back. Bam, bam. Go ahead and fetch a second Tundra, probably. I could get Scrubland. That's fine. I can still eat a Snuff Out on Ornithopter here. Didn't happen. Means I get to put Yuriko in. I drew another land. Obviously not what I'm looking for here. I'm fine with doing a Dazeable Ornithopter. Lol, it actually happened. My opponent has set themselves back 2 land drops at this point. Snuff Out doesn't kill Yuriko. Fatal Push doesn't currently kill Yuriko either. Yeah, that's fine. Alright, no shuffle there. Force of Will is fantastic. We'll just continue to hit in with Yuriko and spiral the card advantage out of control, hitting Orcish Bowmasters, which I don't think I need to tell you is incredibly good. I'll play the Changeling Outcast, pass the turn. I have Hardcast Force of Negation available. I have Orcish Bowmasters available. This is a very good spot. All right, my opponent's fetching. Going to 8. Fatal Push on Yuriko. I would like to say no to that. I think with Force of Negation, pitching it. I don't want to hardcast Force of Negation and then get dazed. All right, good stuff. Yeah. So I'm playing against my 4th Orcish Bowmasters deck in this league. I think I'm looking at these 5 cards. Varies pretty slow on the draw. And awkward versus a known Bowmasters deck. It is another out to just reanimate Troll. So there's that. I think last time around I just cut these for these and played Fair Magic. Makes my Yuriko triggers much less damaging on average. Like I'm subbing in a bunch of 2 and 3 drops for 3 and 5 drops. But hopefully this is just fine. This is an automatic mulligan, just literal 0 mana sources. This is an auto mulligan. I cannot cast any spells in my hand besides Ornithopter. I've got 5 card hands that can spiral the game quickly. I think I ignore the Changeling Retrofitter Foundry synergies and keep reasonable. I don't know. If I get rid of the Changeling Outcast, I don't have outs towards drawing a ninja quickly. I only need one Retrofitter Foundry over the course of the entire game. Maybe I do it this way instead. All right, let's see if I am getting Thought Seized or if my opponent's pondering. I am getting Thought Seized, which means that playing Changeling Outcast now kind of sucks because my opponent can just reanimate my Bowmasters and eat my Changeling Outcast. Yeah. Or play their own Bowmasters, you know. They've got options. Yeah. I have zero agency here. I do not believe that it is correct to just pass the turn after playing a land. I have to play towards drawing a ninja here. But it just really opens up about 8 slots for my opponent to do disgusting things with. Opponent not wastelanding, which feels like a dead giveaway for Bowmasters. That means that I probably shouldn't cast the Ponder. Go ahead and crack in. Yep. Yeah. Knew that was coming. I am going to take no chances on this resolving, and I'm not going to Prismatic Ending it. I'm going to Swords to Plowshares it because it is so critical for me to take this card out of play since I'm about to lose presumably my white source to Wasteland. Fuck. Oh, that's bad. All right, I'm going to call it a turn there. I could Ponder. I'm hoping to not have that happen. All right, I'm at 17. Okay, this is very good. We will attempt to Prismatic Ending this. This is Dazable, unfortunately, but I can't really do anything about that. I can't really afford to wait. Yep. 2 pieces of protection for the Bowmasters is really rough for me. I have plenty of like Plague Engineer style cards that I can hit a little bit later, but I'm trying to do that without growing the Orc token to a 2/2, because that matters a lot. All right, I'm at 14 after that attack. All right, do I wait? Gonna go no. Absolutely not. All right. A land drop is part of the way there, but this does turn that into a 2/2, which is not great for me. Like, I can still Plague Engineer, and like, the Orc is not the end of the world. It'll be a 1/1 afterwards. Yep. All right. I will eat 3 points of damage. I'm at 10, facing down 6 power. I mean, that's a blocker. It's not nothing. We'll get Scrubland to diversify so I can't get knocked off of any one color. And play Yuriko. Opponent's up to 3 mana. If they're playing anything like Sauron's Ransom, those cards are now live. Yep. I'm at 6. God damn it, my opponent just has Murktide Region as well. This was a very powerful hand on their side. All right. I don't know that I have realistic outs anymore. That's a little late. The way that I win probably involves hitting 1 more copy of Swords to Plowshares here. Like, I can Swords, Murktide Regent, let Douthie Voidwalker hit me, and then just be back in a terrible position again. But I think the way that I actually play towards a win is remove this Brainstorm, try to hit another Swords, Murktide Regent. See if we can make it work. Negative. I'm dead in the air to Murktide deterministically. Okay, concede. All right. Do I want Force of Will when I am on the play? To help back up Ninja starts. I could see it. Prismatic Ending doesn't hit everything. Could like do something like this and make it more likely that I can take over the game with a Ninja start. Be a little worse in the late game for doing this. That's a 1-lander do nothing hand. Wow, this is very bad. Am I just keeping a hand that makes 4/4s? Fuck, I think I'm just keeping a hand that makes 4/4s. I don't really want to do that. Alright. Retrofitter Foundry, Ornithopter. I'll just like end up drawing a Force of Will next turn after boarding out extra fair cards and having no blue cards in hand. That is how this game works. I have sort of a Bowmaster resistant hand. Like, it still does some stuff. Alright, my opponent's got a Fatal Push or Snuff Out. There's the Shock. And the Fatal Push. Sure. I'm going to hold up Bowmasters / token generation here, rather than play out the 4/4 since the first one got answered. Hitting a Brainstorm would just be so clutch. And then end of turn, we'll just use our mana to do this and continue to hold up Bowmasters. My opponent might Brainstorm right here. Yeah. Alright, my servo has resolved. Drawing a ninja would be cool. But that did not happen. Give our opponent a little love tap here. And play a Changeling Outcast, which we will convert into a 4/4 in all likelihood. There's the fetch to clear Brainstorm. And a Shock. We might have a Death Shadow to deal with. 11. There is a Death Shadow. It is a 2/2 currently. If I go wide, my Changeling Outcast can eat a Bowmasters, but if my opponent plays Bowmasters, then I can play Bowmasters. And I think I'm good with that. Like, I'm just looking for time here. Yes, yes. Alright, Outcast dies. You get the Orc. I get the Servo. All Bowmasters, your Bowmasters. Ornithopter's not bad either. Go ahead and put that into play. Cast my Bowmasters. Bowmasters, your Bowmasters, before you gain the ability to kind of untap and protect it. I don't want to be attacking in with servos right now. I'm mostly waiting till I draw a ninja. And then I spiral this game. The Death Shadow can't exactly attack right now. Wasteland's kind of whatever. Yep, I mean, I'll float my mana. Yeah, I'm fine changing phases here, I think. Right, my opponent does not attack. Reanimate on Bowmasters. Yep. That's annoying because Death Shadow now grows to trade with a thing. I think I keep the Ornithopter since it's evasive and upgrade a Servo here. Getting another Tundra. Alright, Servo to Ornithopter. So I still have Flyer that can attack. And I guess I will do so. Does grow the Death Shadow. But as long as Retrofitter Foundry is active, that doesn't really matter. We're 12 cards deep without seeing one of our 8 ninjas, though. Which is what I really want. Ponder's happening. And that is a shuffle. Okay, this Death Shadow attack doesn't actually do anything. Because I think block like this. Create another Thopter. And fog the attack. Murktide Regent is what we're afraid of at this stage, and we've dodged it at least for this turn cycle. Oops, all Ornithopters. I mean, I'll attack with what I got. Opponent goes to 6. Cast Ornithopter. While normally I'd think about holding these cards for Brainstorm, right now, like with my opponent having a Bowmasters in play, holding cards for Brainstorm just doesn't make a lot of sense. I guess I could play around Toxic Deluge. That Wasteland's a little annoying. I was planning on doing something really fucking cute this turn. I might still be. I just let my opponent eat 1 token during combat. That's fine. Alright. Sacrifice a Thopter, make a 4/4. And then I use my 3rd mana to untap this so I can make another 4/4. Probably after blocks with Death Shadow. Alright, Scrubland is gone. Death Shadow attacks in. I block with Ornithopter. I make a 4/4. Take 0 damage. Yummy Toxic Deluge, or I think this is over. I guess a Hercule's Recall could do it too. But that should have happened pre-combat if my opponent has it. We're in blocks. You know we're in blocks? Petty theft on a construct token. Sure. Bowmasters is very good here. Am I fine doing this now? Yes, I think I am. Force of Will pitching, Murktide Regent. Sure. Send it, send it, send it. Yep. All right, opponent takes 2. Goes to 3. Is facing down another construct token next turn as well. A Murktide Regent. I'm not sure that that is going to be good enough. All right, no attack. I'll sacrifice my Ornithopter, create another 4/4. Both of these have to be blocked or my opponent is dead. So if my opponent blocks, I can put in Ingenious Infiltrator and my opponent is dead, assuming that their last card is not Fatal Push or Snuff Out. If I give my opponent another turn, Brazen Borrower becomes another blocker. I can attack in with both Thopter tokens. Murktide Regent blocks 1. I ninjutsu with the other. And create a 4/4 with the blocked one. That seems like a good use of my turn that does not leave me dead if my opponent has something. This may be me being a coward. Am I fine with Orcish Bowmaster pings? Yes, I am. They just pings this orc army that isn't doing anything. Sack this Thopter for a 4/4. Alright. Opponent goes to 1. Fetch lands are off. Force of Will, not a great card here. But I think that's fine. Attacks are pretty difficult for my opponent. Yep. So now I just grind this game out further with Retrofitter Foundry. Alright. My opponent is going to kind of end up in past the turn territory here. I have a theoretical lethal attack. Ooh, my opponent has another Bowmasters. Sure. No longer have a theoretically lethal attack. That brainstorm's pretty bad. I'll just be passing the turn. I've got Force of Will as a safety net for some of the worst case scenarios. If my opponent, If my opponent attacks me, I potentially beat them with the following backswing, because this doesn't block flyers. And if they only have one piece of interaction, they're dead. I mean, they can have 2 pieces of interaction and stop what I'm doing. That's interesting. I don't have to go for it this turn. I could Force of Will Brazen Borrower and stay alive at 1, never being able to fetch. Do I think my opponent has 2 pieces of interaction or interaction plus Force of Will specifically? Or I guess it could be Force of Negation. Is this the spot? I guess if they have a counterspell and I try to stop Brazen Borrower, I lose, right? I do. If they have a counterspell, so I do make the attack. Okay. See what you got. We've gotten the GGs from my opponent. They're going to take it all. We end up with a 2-3 finish. It's possible I was just supposed to go for it on that one turn, but I figured that I could grind through with Retrofitter Foundry like I did, but it was definitely a little nerve-wracking. All right, so how do we feel about this deck at the end of the league? Medium, honestly. I feel like I got a little bit unlucky to lose the game versus Mono Black. I think I outplayed that opponent pretty savagely, and things kind of fell apart at the tail end of that game. I still think the double block on the Grief was correct. Like, Castle Locktwain hitting Sholdred specifically to make it so they didn't die to their own Castle Locktwain was not unlikely, but one of the few things that actually turned Castle Locktwain into not a dead card, especially considering that they were at like 4 or 6 life or something like that when I made that trade. So like, I think I'm good with that. But I felt some awkwardness, like the second island in the mana base I don't know that I'm a fan of. Like, I get wanting to play the game on basics versus Delver. Like, I really and truly do get that. But so frequently you need turn 1 Changeling Outcast, or you want to have access to swords. I don't know that this Esper mana base gets to get away with 3 basic lands. I think that's thing number 1 that I feel. Beyond that, I don't really feel like the deck is objectively bad, but I don't feel like the deck is as good at playing Protect the Queen with one of these 2 creatures as it used to be. Like, this version does not have the dazes, because you're trying to fit in Orcish Bowmasters as a very powerful and probably necessary plan B. And you're also trying to have these things like Teferi and Prismatic Ending in there. Then you're not as good or as consistent as spiraling the game with the initial ninjas, which is kind of how I've tended to play this deck. Because it's kind of medium as a control deck. Because, you know, a lot of times in that mid game, you know, you draw these cards when you don't have a Retrofitter Foundry, and they look a little embarrassing. So I don't know that I would put a lot of time into tuning ninjas right now, personally. As you saw in 4 of our 5 rounds, we are just in Orcish Bowmasters, the format. And any deck that has X1s that aren't Orcish Bowmasters as a general part of their strategy needs to really think long and hard about whether or not that's the place where you want to be. Because I actively do not believe that this is one of the better blue-black decks in the format. I will say the Plague Engineers and extra Orcish Bowmaster that I added to the sideboard helped a lot against Orcish Bowmasters, but is what I have to say here. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I hope you have a great rest of the day. And remember, if you need paper magic cards, check out Cool Stuff Inc. and use promo code ThrabenU to save 5% on your order. All right. Bowmaster, Bowmaster, Bowmaster. See ya.